Well, these videos we've been watching this week have been amazing, aren't they? I tell you, the Mariana Trench has been an interesting topic to talk about, and learned a lot. I tell you, I'm not real excited about going down deep under the water, but I like watching these people do it, and hopefully you have too. So we'll learn more about it today. I want to start our lesson today with our vocabulary words. Tomorrow's your test, and you'll have these vocabulary words on your test, just like you did on your assignment yesterday. So let's take a look at pictures of these words today on these picture cards to help us understand them. A trench is a long, narrow groove or ditch. Look at this tractor. Look at this huge trench. It's dug into the ground. See dirt flying everywhere. Guess he's going to plant some things here, or maybe this is going to be some kind of irrigation channel where water is going to go through. To dig that deep, I would think it might be that. But that's a trench, a long, narrow groove or ditch. Okay, moving on. A summit. The summit is the top or highest point of a mountain. It's very cold way up there, isn't it? The higher up you go, the cooler it is. And there's always snow at the top of these mountains that are super high, aren't there? At the summit. Thrive. To thrive is to grow well and be healthy. When living things thrive, they grow well and they're healthy. There's maybe a rainforest here. Lots of water, lots of rain, lots of foliage, lots of plants growing. It's a thriving place, a rainforest is. Lots of animal life if we were to get in there and look. And prehistoric. Prehistoric, something that's prehistoric is very old, from a time before history was recorded. The dinosaurs are prehistoric. We have the fossil remains to show us what they might have looked like. I'm glad they were prehistoric and not living now, aren't you? Vital is one of our words. Vital is something that's needed or it's very important. These girls are watering a plant. Water is vital for a plant to be able to grow. We know from photosynthesis, right? And glimpse. Glimpse, a very quick look at something. If you were out on it wouldn't be Cherokee Lake, would it? If you saw a killer whale in Cherokee Lake, that'd be a pretty scary thing. They don't live in lakes. They live in the ocean. Get a glimpse of maybe a turtle in Cherokee Lake before he ducks back down under. If you're out in the ocean, you might get a glimpse of a killer whale jumping up to get some air. Submersible. Hey, there's a submersible turtle. A sea turtle. It's submersible, isn't it? It can go or work underwater. There's somebody scuba diving that's made them submersible. And what do they hold in their hand? A submersible a submersible camera. They're using their camera to take a picture of the sea life there. Submersible can go or work underwater. Remotely, you can control something from a distance, like a remote control car. Bunch of words this week. Autonomous. It controls itself. So here's some kind of robot arms, robot gear in a factory. Look what they're working on. In the background there, you see the car. So these autonomous robots, autonomous machines, they're programmed to build the car to do a specific task as the car is being built. Nobody has to control them. They are programmed to control themselves. Pretty amazing. All right, that was the last one. All right, so those are vocabulary words. They're in your book. Make sure you know them. We've talked about reference sources this week, how you could use a dictionary maybe if you need to find what a word means or how to pronounce it, how many syllables are in a word. You know, one of the tools that we can use to help us understand what words mean are their roots. And we've looked at root words this week, this year. But sometimes these words that we read, like these four particular that we've talked about this week, have Greek roots. And it's from Greek is an old language. And these Greek roots we're going to look at today are auto, bio, photo, and graph. The Greeks must have liked to end their words in O, huh? And then grapho. A root is a basic word part that cannot stand alone as a word. Many English words contain roots that come from Greek or Latin. Knowing the meaning of Greek and Latin roots can help you understand the meaning of unknown words. So let's look at the Greek roots and their meaning, and then we'll look at them in some of our vocabulary words and some words from our story. So the Greek root auto means self. Isn't that odd? When I think of auto, I think of an automobile because we say we're going to buy an auto. But really, think more like automatic. It does it itself. So auto is self. So a vocabulary word or from our story this week, autonomous means it controls itself, something that controls itself. Auto is self. So autonomous controls itself. Bio, it means life. You get in high school, you'll study biology, the study of life. Bioluminescence is the production of light by something that's alive, by a living thing. Bioluminescent. Bio means life. The Greek root photo means light. Photosynthesis, do you remember that? Photosynthesis, making food from light. Well, photograph, it's an image produced by using light on a sensitive surface such as film. So without light, could you use your camera to take a photo? No, there would be no photo. Photo means light. And graph means to write. An oceanographer is a person who studies or writes about the ocean. Maybe they draw a map of the ocean or illustrate a map of the Mariana Trench. So these Greek roots, they help us understand what words mean when we know what the root itself means. And we see these roots quite often. Autobiographies. What's an autobiography? It's a biography written by someone's self, right? They wrote it themselves. Automatic. That means it does it by itself. Bio. Can you think of any words? I said biology, the study of life. Photo. Yeah, we take photos. You have to give light. Photograph. Photosynthesis. Graph paper. If we say we need graph paper, it's paper we're going to write on or graph on, right? So these words help us, these roots rather, help us understand some of the words we might be reading. Okay, moving on. Let's look at text structure for a minute. We've looked at this before. When an author creates a text, writes a story, he has a purpose to it. Sometimes the purpose is to compare and contrast two different things, telling how things are alike and how they're different. You know, there's a comparison in the text we're reading this week of how deep the Mariana Trench is compared to how tall Mount Everest is. So there's comparing and contrasting in portions of our story this week. Cause and effect. Well, there's a little bit of cause and effect in our story when it talks about the bioluminescent fish, because the fish have parts that glow. It attracts other fish that become their meal, right? The effect of a glowing little antenna on your head is some fish comes up to see what it is and you chop them in half. So cause and effect is in our text, our story this week. First, next, and last. There's a little bit of it. The video we watched today was definitely first, next, and last. First, you go this deep. This is where the Titanic is. Next, you go this deep. This is how deep whales can dive. Then you go to the last. That's the deepest place, the Mariana, the deepest part of the trench there. So there's some sequencing in our story. Not a whole lot. There's a little bit of sequencing in our story. What happens first, next, and last. And then problem and solution. Well, I don't know that it's our story so much as problem and solution, but it has some problem and solution in it, doesn't it? The problem is the pressure of the water at the bottom of the Mariana Trench would crush a human. Hundreds of elephants, it said. It'd be like hundreds of elephants on your head. The solution is, well, you can't go down there, but you can design a submersible that would go down that deep, right? And could withstand the pressure so you could explore. There's problem and solution there too. But all of these things can happen in stories. Some stories are specifically one of these. Our story this week has each of these in it in different places. Speaking of our story, let's read it together one more time this week before you take your test on it tomorrow. So it's on page 19 in your textbook. I know you read it to somebody yesterday. Let's read it together today, and we'll be ready for the test on it tomorrow. Mariana Trench. Oh, my computer's going to be slow, apparently. What do you want to talk about? Anybody got a good joke while we're waiting for this to pop up? Anybody got a joke about the fish? No. Okay, I'm going to pause my video till this pops up. Okay, I think I finally got it working. My computer froze up, wouldn't open the story up. So now we're ready to read. And of course, we're on page 20 in our book here. And so our story starts off. Many people know that the highest point on Earth is at the top of Mount Everest. That famous peak towers 29,035 feet above sea level. It's in the Himalayan mountains near the border of China and Nepal. But how many people can name the lowest place in the world? That point is at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, a valley in the floor of the Pacific Ocean. The trench lies just east of the Mariana Islands, southeast of China and Japan. Right? The satellite photo of the Pacific Ocean shows the Mariana Trench as a dark blue crescent right there. This is taken from a satellite image. Pretty amazing. This enormous trench extends for about 1,554 miles from one end to the other. It could stretch from New York City almost to Denver, Colorado. The trench averages about 45 miles wide. A person walking at a brisk pace would need about 10 hours to go from one side to the other. Inside that groove in the ocean floor is the Challenger Deep, the deepest spot in the world. It lies 210 miles from the island of Guam. It's about 36,000 feet below sea level, almost 7 miles deep. If Mount Everest were placed in the Challenger Deep, the mountain's peak would still be under 7,000 feet of water. There's a picture of Mount Everest. Imagine Challenger Deep is that deep plus 7,000 feet more, which is about 2 miles more. Here's a satellite image of the deepest areas in the Mariana Trench, the dark blue parts. And I love the weird creatures there that live there, the flashlight fish and the angler fish. Conditions are very harsh at the summit of Mount Everest. Temperatures average negative 33 degrees Fahrenheit, and winter winds howl at more than 100 miles an hour. Yet climbers have reached the top and live to tell about it. But no human, not even an expert diver, could survive the environment of the Challenger Deep. In this pitch-black world, the temperature is about 36 degrees Fahrenheit. The human body shuts down quickly in water that cold. A person on the ocean floor would also be crushed by the weight of the water. Water is heavy. A 1 gallon 4-liter milk jug holds about 8 pounds of water. At the deepest point in the ocean, water would press down with a weight heavier than hundreds of elephants. However, living things do thrive in the Mariana Trench. Some creatures look like deep-sea movie monsters or survivors from prehistoric times. These animals and plants are specially built for life in an extreme environment. Some can produce a glowing light like fireflies. This is called bioluminescence. There's that bio, that Greek root we looked at. It means life. Creatures use this light to attract prey. Anglerfish have bioluminescence built-in fishing poles. In some of these fish, the pole's like an antenna growing from the top of the head. The rod glows in dark water. The anglerfish waves it to attract other fish, and when a fish approaches, the angler snaps up the prey in its huge mouth, packed with long, needle-sharp teeth. Yikes. Flashlight fish also live in the Mariana Trench. Like the anglerfish, they are also bioluminescent. The flashlight fish lurks in the dark water and turns its light on and off. When a curious fish approaches, it becomes dinner. Certain types of crabs and bacteria thrive in the Mariana Trench. Scientists had never seen some of these until fairly recent deep-sea explorations. This is because the creatures can't exist anywhere else. The extreme temperatures and pressures of the deep ocean are vital to these organisms. Ever wonder? Why is it pitch dark in the deep ocean? In the oceans, deeper means dimmer. Water absorbs and scatters sunlight, so little light remains after 660 feet. Beyond that depth is a twilight zone where the human eye cannot see colors. This zone of faint light goes down to about 3,300 feet. The midnight zone from there on down is total darkness. What do you think, from what we've learned in science earlier in the year, this sentence right here, the twilight zone where humans cannot see colors. What do we learn about light and color? Do you remember? When we shine white light through a spectrum, it splits into the colors of the rainbow, right? So I guess at that depth, white light can't travel enough that the colors would be seen. Isn't that weird? That's interesting. And then white light just stops when it gets down to about 3,300 feet. There's no light at all. But the water must be doing something to block those colors within white light. That's interesting. William Beebe, an explorer, described the deep ocean after setting a world record in 1934 by diving to 3,028 feet in a submersible, a small submarine. Challenger looks deep. The Mariana Trench was discovered in 1875. Scientists on the British ship HMS Challenger used a machine to measure ocean depth in different places. The machine unreeled a spool of wire with heavy weight at the ends. Dials measured the length of wire let out. When the weight touched bottom, scientists could tell the depth of the ocean floor. With that simple method, they realized that the water near the Mariana Islands was extremely deep. In 1951, the British Royal Navy vessel HMS Challenger II returned to the area with a modern measuring device. It's called echo sounding or sonar. It sends out sound waves that bounce off a surface, such as the seafloor. Scientists measured the time needed for sound waves to bounce back from the seafloor to the ship. This told them the ocean depth. Using echo sounding, Challenger 2 mapped the entire Mariana Trench. The deepest point it found was 35,760 feet. That point was named the Challenger Deep after the ship. We'll come back to this in a minute. People got their first glimpse of the Challenger Deep in 1960. That year, scientists Jacques Piccard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh traveled to the bottom. They rode in the Trieste, a submersible vehicle. Small submarines of this kind are built to withstand extreme underwater pressure. They usually carry scientific instruments for exploring the deep ocean. Piccard and Walsh found a point deeper than Challenger 2 had found. It was 35,813 feet. So Challenger Deep is 35,760 feet below the surface. They also observed small fish near the ocean floor. Since then, oceanographers have used other vehicles and instruments to explore the deep ocean. Some are remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs. Scientists control these through cables from a ship on the surface. Others are autonomous. There's another Greek root, autou, self. Autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs. These explore on their own without any connection to another ship. AUVs navigate with onboard computers and record data from the areas they explore. In the 1990s, several Japanese ROVs explored the Mariana Trench. They observed shrimp, sandworms, and other living things. The ROV Keiko, I think it's how you pronounce it, Keiko scooped up samples of mud from the trench floor for scientists to study. Scientists found tiny organisms in those samples that are Earth's deepest living creatures. Here's those two guys that went down in the bottom of the Mariana Trench. 12 U.S. astronauts have been on the moon. They explored the moon's surface in the 1960s and 1970s during the Apollo space program. However, only 2 people have ever visited the deepest place on Earth. I'm getting tongue-tied today. Don Walsh, right here, and Jacques Piccard, top right, spent just 20 minutes there during their descent in the Trieste. All right, and then up here, a deep-sea submersible collects samples from the bottom of the Mariana Trench using a robotic arm. Wonder what that thing is right there. It looks like some kind of living thing, doesn't it? Plates so deep. The Mariana Trench is so deep because of movements in Earth's surface. Many huge plates of rock make up the surface. Earth's crust, or outer layer, forms the top of each plate. The bottom of each plate is part of Earth's mantle, the thick layer below the crust. These plates float on a layer of putty-like rock in the mantle. While floating, the edges of these plates slide past one another and bump into one another. At the Mariana Trench, a heavy plate of rock on the ocean floor is pressing against a plate of lighter rock. When this happens, the heavier ocean plate plunges downward at a steep angle into Earth's mantle. The bottom of the Mariana Trench is where that heavy plate of rock is moving down into the mantle. Plate movements have formed more than 20 other deep ocean trenches in different parts of the world. The Puerto Rico Trench, for instance, is the deepest place in the Atlantic Ocean. It lies north of the island of Puerto Rico. The trench is about 5 miles deep and 1,100 miles long. And I found this really interesting right here, the Mariana Trench Expressway. Navy submarines patrolling the world's oceans like to stay in the deep water. It's more difficult for enemies to detect them there. That's why U.S., Russian, and other submarines often use the Mariana Trench as an expressway. The trench is the main north-south route for submarines in the Pacific Ocean. I think that's really interesting that Navy submarines like to use the trench to go down deep and hide from their enemies. At the Mariana Trench, the movement of ocean plates into Earth's mantle created many underwater volcanoes. This cliff near the Mariana Trench shows layers of light and dark ash that collected on the seafloor during eruption. So you can see the different layers here. Worries about the wonder. The future of the Mariana Trench seems very safe. Neither people nor nature threatens its existence. Ships sailing over the area do not cause any damage to the trench. However, movements of the Earth's plates may eventually change the Mariana Trench. In millions of years, it may be deeper or shallower, but it's sure to remain a wonder that holds many secrets of the deep. The Mariana Trench is not threatened by humans, but the Mariana Islands on its edge are home to many endangered species of fish and marine plants. 2009, the Mariana Trench Marine National Monument was established. It protects the Mariana Islands, the trench, and the underwater volcanoes. Well, I really enjoyed this story this week. Sometimes when I hear that it's an informational text, I'm like, I'm not so excited about it. But this was really good information. I enjoyed learning about especially I think the animals were my favorite part. Those crazy looking creatures that live deep in the Mariana Trench, those big teeth and that they're bioluminescent, that they glow. I think that was my favorite part of the story. Okay, well, today for me, we're going to do another paragraph. I know you're excited about that. And today, here's what your paragraph is going to do. I wrote a paragraph as an example, and then I'm going to give you a little prompt here. It says, one Christmas, my father-in-law gave me an interesting present. This is a true story, by the way. It was the worst present I ever received. It was a toilet seat warmer. True story. It was made of cloth, was in the shape of a toilet seat, and had a heater on the inside. You plug it into the wall, and then you place it on the toilet seat to warm it up before you sit down. I never used it. How weird, right? That's a true story. I didn't even know there was such a thing, but I guess if you don't want your tushy to get cold on the toilet, you can warm your seat if you can find one of those. Well, I want you to think about either the best or the worst present that anybody's ever given you. And I want you down below it here. Just tell me, what is that present? What is the best present you've ever gotten or the worst present you've ever gotten? Don't just give me a sentence. You've got to write a paragraph. Give me a topic sentence and 3 or 4 details to support that topic sentence, okay? And of course, your topic is the best present I ever had is, or the worst present I ever had is, or you can kind of mix it up like I have here, and make sure you got your topic supported by your detailed sentences. That's the main thing I'm looking for. As always, capitalize your sentences, put your punctuation in the right place. All that counts as part of your grade, okay? Well, I'll let you get to work. You also have your second spelling practice for me today for tomorrow's test as well. Tomorrow you'll have your story test on the Mariana Trench. You'll have your spelling test on the words we've been working on this week. And you'll have one more paragraph to write for a test grade tomorrow. So I'll let you get started on today's assignment, and we'll see you tomorrow.